deans of the faculties, heads of the departments, directors of the centers, faculty of university, officers of the university, scholars, students, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and greetings of the day to all of you. I, on behalf of Center of Central Asian Studies, welcome Professor Nilofer Khan, Honorable Vice Chancellor, for gracing the occasion as chief guest. Without her generous support and leadership, this event would not have been possible. Madam, we deeply appreciate your encouragement for all our endeavors at the center. I, on behalf of University of Kashmir and Center of Central Asian Studies, welcome His Excellency Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar for gracing the occasion as a guest of honor and accepting our invitation to the keynote speaker. Welcome, sir. A hearty welcome to Professor Yamuthu, our teacher, mentor, and inspiration, to all of us for making it here this morning and blessing us with his presence. My deep gratitude and warm welcome to Dr. Nisar Ahmed Mir, Registrar, University of Kashmir, for making it here. We appreciate and acknowledge his continued and unconditional support to the center. I would like to extend my warm welcome to the distinguished speakers and participants who have joined us from different universities and colleges across the country. I am sure that they will contribute greatly to the event with their knowledge, experience, and expertise. Last but not the least, a very warm welcome to all the dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, who have joined us for this significant event, for this significant seminar on connecting Central Asia, opportunities and challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, the Center of Central Asian Studies is one of the biggest multidisciplinary research centers in India, researching 12 different disciplines like we have history, sociology, international relations, Islamic studies, geography, economics, sociology, library science, archaeology, Persian, Sanskrit, and Kashmiri. Being an interdisciplinary research center of the university, various research projects in collaboration with ICSSR and UGC are conducted from time to time. The faculty members of the center are also conducting individual and joint research projects such as projects related to archaeological studies of the migration routes from Central Asia to Kashmir, which is funded by Gregor Henkel Stiftung in Germany. We have projects related to Central Asian art in Kashmir, funded by Oxford Brookes University, supported by Arcadia. We have many projects with the University of Sydney, Australia. We are doing that in collaboration with the University of Sydney, Australia, and there are many more projects which we are doing with DST and DST Government of India. Since 1990, the center has been publishing its journal, the Journal of Central Asian Studies. It has an internationally recognized editorial board and is acclaimed worldwide. The center has a museum called the Central Asian Museum, which has a varied collection of rare antiquities and artifacts having archaeological and iconographic significance. The center has also undertaken an ambitious research project on revival of the Silk Route. 4 phases of the field study has already been completed jointly by the members of faculty of the Center of Central Asian Studies. Phase 3rd, which is Silk Route Excursion, which we completed in 2009, which was Lehchashul, and Phase 4th, which is Silk Route Excursion, which we completed in 2015, is Bandipora Gurez. After completing these projects, the preliminary report has been published by the center as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the center has successfully organized several international conferences and national seminars. This is a regular feature of our center, and it is highly connected with several foreign institutes for academic cooperation. To this effect, the University of Kashmir has inked several memoranda of understanding with the most prestigious universities and institutes in Turkey, China, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Australia, Russia, and France to carry out joint academic and research activities.
Let me first of all say what a great pleasure and privilege it is for me to come here to the University of Kashmir. I was just mentioning to the Honorable Vice Chancellor, this is not the first time I'm coming here. I've been here many times. I've been to many other universities in India and abroad, also several times. But I can confess to you that the place where I enjoy coming the most is to Srinagar and to the University of Kashmir. So I'm particularly delighted to be here today. And I think what really encourages and inspires me greatly is to see a full hall, not even sort of standing space available, which really speaks about the huge interest that the student community in the university has in issues relating to relations with Central Asia. I think in addition to that, what I can also mention is I'm truly inspired and encouraged to see the presence of such a large number of young women scholars amongst us. And I think any place, any state, any university, any country for that matter, if we can have 50%, if not more, of the participation, as I can see in the hall today, the future of that place, that university, and that country is very bright and glorious. So with these few introductory remarks, let me share a few thoughts on India's relations with Central Asia and with the position of Central Asia in the world as it stands. I think it is particularly relevant and important that the University of Kashmir and particularly the Center of Central Asian Studies has organized this conference, two-day national conference, because Central Asia is truly central to what is happening in Kashmir, in Jammu and Kashmir today. Because of the geographical proximity, I will not say geographical contiguity because that unfortunately does not happen to be here, but geographical proximity. And I think it is also important that today we are focusing on Central Asia. So although the famed British geographer Halford John Mackinder in 1904 had said, he enunciated his heartlands theory, which said that the country or whichever power controls the region of Central Asia will dominate the whole world. That notwithstanding, the interest in Central Asia has been rather meager and rather inadequate. So I'm happy that the Kashmir University has focused on this particular subject. What I will also say is that possibly Central Asia has been a victim of its own success. Why do I say that? Because Central Asia, after its, particularly after its independence and liberation from the Soviet Union in 1991, by and large, it has stayed peaceful. It has stayed without any violence. It has continued to progress. Of course, there have been there's been a different pace at which the different countries in Central Asia, the 5 countries of Central Asia, have progressed. But that nevertheless, they have been progressing. And they have been peaceful, they have been tranquil, they have been stable. And when there is a stability in any place, it doesn't really make for any news. You will hear about whatever is happening in terms of the violence, in terms of militancy, in terms of bomb blasts in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, but not in Central Asia. Except, unfortunately, this year. This year, in the 31st year of the independence of these countries, we have had 3 major conflagrations and conflicts in 4 of these countries. At the beginning of this year, in Kazakhstan, in which more than 200 people were killed. After that, in Uzbekistan, in Karakalpakstan, where about 18 or so people were killed. And then more recently in September, in the conflict between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, in which more than 100 people died. Again, these are the sort of conflicts that this region of Central Asia has not seen for many years, ever since they became independent. So I think it is time that the world and also we in India, and particularly in Kashmir, start looking at this region much more closely. So I think before I go into the India-Central Asia relations, what are the determining aspects and what is it mean? I'll speak very briefly in the 20 minutes that Professor Firdaus has given to me. I'll speak very briefly on how the relations have evolved and grown, but I will try to focus my remarks more on what is it that the future holds for us and what is it that we can do together with the Central Asian countries. But I think a couple of defining characteristics of this region would be useful to know. The first is that none of these countries, 5 countries, wanted independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. When the Soviet Union disintegrated, none of them wanted independence. In fact, freedom and liberty was handed to these countries on a platter, unlike some of the other countries like the Baltic republics and Baltic states who had to fight for their liberty. These countries did not have to do that. The second defining aspect of this region is that all these countries are landlocked countries. And in fact, one of them, that is Uzbekistan, is a doubly landlocked state. Now, the general oft-quoted wisdom is that you have to have access to the warm waters of the seas if your economies are to do well. But these countries have changed their shortcomings, their liabilities into assets by building huge, whether it is railroads or it is expressways or it is oil pipelines or gas pipelines or other connectivity formats. The third aspect here is that most of these countries are extremely rich and well endowed with natural and mineral resources, whether it is Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan with mineral resources, and Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan with natural water resources, hydropower. Now, coming to the relations between India and Central Asia, as Professor Tabassum Firdaus has very well articulated in her opening statement, that there have been ancient cultural, civilizational ties between India and Central Asia. In fact, much of this region was a part of the empire of Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE. We also see that several tribes, like the Sakap tribes, had come from this region into India and established major empires here. Going forward, we of course saw the movement of the Sufi tradition from this region through the teachings of Khwaja Ahmad Yasavi to India, and of course over the Silk Route we saw not only the transfer of goods and services, but also thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and the movement of religion from India to this region, to the western part of, from where it moved into the western part of China. In the 16th century, we saw Babur coming from the Fargana Valley into India. In Kashmir, we saw the uncle of Akbar, that is Mirza Hyder Dulat. He reigned here. He was a scholar. He was an enlightened ruler. So there are a large number of commonalities that both India and this region share. And of course, during the Soviet times, in recent times, we know of the very close connection in culture, in literature, as also in economy that existed between these Soviet socialist republics and India. Now, coming to the modern times, of course, the contemporary times, India considers this region to be a part of its extended neighborhood. And we know that in terms of whether it is security, it is stability, it is prosperity of India, it is very closely linked to this particular region. We also are aware that when we have any decisions are to be taken as far as this region is concerned, it is taken at the highest level. So we have tried to have very strong interactions at the political level, at the executive level. So we had very good visits to the region by our Prime Minister in 1993, immediately after the independence of all these countries. Prime Minister Narasimha Rao at that time, he visited Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. In 1995, he visited Kyrgyzstan and Turkmenistan. But after that, we find that for 20 long years, there was this region either came under some sort of neglect, because in this 20 years, we had only 4 prime ministerial visits from India to the region. In 2002 to Kazakhstan, 2003 to Tajikistan, 2011 to Kazakhstan, and that's about it. So very few visits at the level of the chief executive from India. But after that, what we find that there is a much greater focus. For the first time, we saw in 2015, Prime Minister Modi visiting all the 5 countries of this region in July 2015. He was the first and the only Prime Minister, Indian Prime Minister, to have visited all these countries. Then we saw, as Professor Firdaus mentioned, beginning of this year on the 27th of January, the first India Central Asia Summit dialogue taking place. And that has sought to give, it has been decided that these summit interactions will take place once every 2 years. But in between that, there'll be meetings of Minister of Commerce, Ministers of Culture, Ministers of, even in terms of National Security Advisors meeting will take place, and of course, Ministers of External Affairs. Now, this is really setting the stage for a significant expansion and deepening of bilateral ties. Before that, we have seen in 2019 how the India Central Asia Dialogue was also institutionalized by the then External Affairs Minister of India, Sushma Swaraj. After that, in 2020, it took place in a virtual format. In 2021, we had the privilege of receiving all the foreign ministers of the 5 Central Asian states coming to India. And then we've also had the National Security Advisors meeting in India to discuss the issue of Afghanistan, particularly in terms of security in Afghanistan. So where does it place us, places us today? Our Prime Minister, in addition to his visits in 2015, he has been to this region in 2016 to Tashkent for the SCO summit, 2017 to Astana again for the SCO summit, 2019 to Bishkek, and this year earlier 2022 to Samarkand in Uzbekistan for the SCO summit. This year India takes over the chairmanship of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which means that there will be a large number of visits from this region to India, because India will be organizing several meetings at different levels, senior officials, ministerial, and so this is expected to provide a very strong impetus to our bilateral ties.
It gives me immense pleasure to see that the seeds which we have sown long back, I think more than 30 years, 40 years, have now turned into very powerful, blooming tree, and is spreading its scent in all the directions of the globe. It has not remained confined to that very limited area which we have initiated early. This gives me an additional pleasure to be with you and to share my own thoughts, which I would like to discuss in the course of the seminars too. However, the canvas has been articulated by His Excellency and the Director so vividly that there is hardly left anything which we cannot further elaborate. However, there are some issues which I would like to share. That the first thing, geostrategic importance of Central Asia and its significance not only through the historical times but also at the current moment. You know, the establishment of Center of Central Asian Studies was conceived as early as in 50s on the directions of the then Education Minister Maulana Abul Kalam Azad and the then Prime Minister of Kashmir, Sheikh Abdullah. But it could not mature at that time. It was only after 75 that we were able to establish this center under the guidance of Professor Maqbool Ahmad, Professor Rais Ahmad, Professor Noorul Hassan, and other dignitaries at that time, the academic stars in the world. The very concept of establishing this center was to understand the cultural ethos of Kashmir, because we have the impact not only Kashmir, the entire northern India, including Afghanistan and beyond, has the impact of the Turkic revolution of 13th century, and the culture was transmitted from Morocco to down deep into the south through the Turkish sultans who established their rule in India for a very, very long time. This was not only a cultural transformation, it was also a commercial transformation too. And these very sultans ultimately were capable enough to stop the Mongol invasions which otherwise devastated even the Muslim empires in Middle East. Besides this, landmass with no access to sea on any side, it was always vulnerable to foreign invasions, and no central authority emerged to push back the conquering powers. First Huns, Mongols, later the Russian travelers and traders and conquerors, Russian expansion in the east, and in search of warm waters through Afghanistan, though a misadventure, and Chinese interest continuously and rightly said by His Excellency that China is now coming forward to have the footprints in the area pushed outwards to Central Asia. The Huns, Tang and Ming dynasties would even come down to Fargana Valley and Tarim Basin. Later on, Qing dynasty of China consolidated its control over the region. From south to the demographic and cultural influence of South Asia beyond Hindu Kush, however, due to the emergence of Pakistan, Indian influence could not expand in that area. Similarly, Islamic empires extended substantial influence on the region. Iran, Arabs, Turkey, from historical times, though common Turkic ethnic identity has gradually its influence in the region. You know that by and large, most of these republics of Central Asia have the ethnicity which is quite common with Turkic speaking people. And the Turks have, right after the independence of these countries, claimed that they are more akin to them than to others. They started their influence and interference in the affairs. But thank God that the republics of Central Asia did not allow other powers to disseminate them from the geographical map of Central Asia. They emerged. Of course, for some time there was a lull. In the initial stages, there was a romanticism about the Central Asian republics. Russians, Americans, and the European powers, even India and other countries, tried to have the pound of flesh, but they did not allow it. They stabilized themselves and they tried to stabilize their economies too well. However, Kazakhstan, which was a nuclear power initially, was deprived of that. As that stage, they needed more money, more dollars to stabilize their own position, so they were deprived of that authority and the nuclear warheads were taken away. Nevertheless, they retained the Baikonur, this field, to have the further expansion in the and utilize that for the benefit, economic benefits of that country. Initially, it was considered that these republics will not survive, but as rightly said by the ambassador, His Excellency, that these powers have enough resources to mobilize. Of course, there are some states where there is deficiency of water, but by their management of resources, they are now developing large dams which may be sufficient enough to provide water to those desert areas and of course for some benefit of Uzbekistan and other regions. Tajikistan is considered to be one of the best sources of hydraulic power, whereas the Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan have the minerals besides these hydrocarbons, which are enough resources for them to develop. In medieval and before, controlled the Silk Route network was the master of the then, as it was said, that those who control the highways control the world. And in the medieval and ancient times, the highways were the trade routes. Thus, China used to control the Silk Route right from China to Aleppo in Syria. And a network of Silk routes connected even Kashmir. One of the routes passed through Kashmir, which connected the entire network system. Thus, the impact and imprint of this cultural ethos of Central Asian countries, and besides that, the Muslim countries, is very vivid and clear in the culture of Kashmir. If you go through the architecture of Kashmir, you will see that Doric impact on Kashmir on the architecture is very vivid. We have in the Central Asian Museum also the collections where we have that so many artifacts which resemble the artifacts found in Middle East or found in the rest of the world on this Silk Route system. Thus, Kashmir was not immune, it was never immune from the developments in the other parts of the world.
At the outset, I welcome our worthy former ambassador to Kazakhstan, Mr. Ashok Sajanharji, who is amongst us, and it was a great pleasure to listen to him. I think after he spoke, there's very less for us to speak. He very extensively gave us the whole picture of Central Asia. And as I was inquiring, I'm happy that you have been to this university before also. Again, very happy to see our former registrar and my colleague, Professor A. Mattu, with my side, who has immensely contributed to the development of this university, whether administratively or academics or research. Professor Tabassum ji, I really congratulate you for this conference. I am very happy to see my old colleague, Professor Mushtaq Kausab. He's also been the former Dean, College Development Council, the director of this CCAS for a long time. Personally, I feel that after my speakers who spoke before me, there's very less for me to speak, but I am very happy that this particular 2 days conference, which is organized pertaining to connecting Central Asia challenges and opportunities. I feel the sessions are well thought of about the geopolitics, trade, economy, tourism. I could also see something pertaining to gender development, architecture, and I was very happy, and I have noted it down, that Professor Mattu gave an idea about improving the ties of tourism, improving the ties of trade. I think our youth should participate and deliberate on these issues, and let's see how we can, how our university can, prove to be, instrumental in putting up these ideas about tourism and trade. Of course, at the country level, this must be taken care of, but from this institute, from your center, let there be, various, I would definitely let there be some small panel discussions about the Central Asian culture, the Central Asian studies, so that not only the students of Central Asia, scholars, they only know about these countries. Even it should be of interest to everyone, as some of my previous speakers said, that life in Kashmir is very much influenced by the countries of Central Asia. True, I think somebody missed about the food habits. Our food habits are very much related to the food habits of Central Asia. We can work on various such types of problems, or such types of topics. With these words, I'm really happy that this conference is being organized. I congratulate Professor Tabassum and her team for organizing this conference. Administration is always there for encouraging such type of activities. Budget can be arranged here and there, but I would like that we really engage our youth, we engage our students also in the activity. So for that, just try to have small panel discussion, a small debate, small seminars, so that our students can also be roped in. With these words, thanks again.
At the outset, I congratulate Dr. Tabassum and his team for holding this national seminar on Central Asian challenges and connectivity. I, being a student also from the Central Asia, I have done my PhD from the Central Asia, though I have moved from academics to administration long back. But what has today I learned from the learned speakers, particularly my teacher, Professor Mattu, and the learned ambassador, Mr. Ashok. When we talk about the historical proximity of the country with Central Asian countries, or when we see the world is now entering into an era of global geopolitical transformation, where we need to not only revive our connectivity relations, but we also need to strengthen them. And for that matter, what already talked about it by the former ambassador, that the country's prime minister is already had a lot of visits to the Central Asian countries to revive our old relation with the Central Asian countries. But nonetheless, we see that Kashmir, because being influenced by mostly by the Central Asian countries, whether we talk of the religion, whether we talk of the economics, whether we talk of the culture, whether we talk of the ethnography, we are greatly influenced by the Central Asian countries. And to study and revive all those connections, we need to have a strong academic and research base at our state country level as well as our union territory level also. While I had an opportunity to visit at the national level in University Grants Commission, I was looking after these centers at the national level. I was looking after the South Asian studies, Chinese studies, and all the centers, all the centers which we have established at the national level to study the research, to go for the research and the academics about the Central Asian countries and the India, and to see the connectivity between the world, particularly the Central Asia and the South Asia. We all know that almost the South Asia and Central Asia inhabit almost 2 billion population of the world, and out of it, 1.40 billion is of the India only. So India has a great influence, not in the South Asia, but in the Central Asia as well. But unfortunately, while looking after all those centers at the national level, we couldn't do much because their 12th plan has already stopped at that time. It stopped in the 2017, and most of the funding under plan mechanism has that time stopped, and we were having area study center. We had an area study center in the Central Asia here also. So because of the funding issue, all the centers throughout the country were hit back, and I wish that because the plans are yet to start, the plans like 5-year plan, then the country was thinking about having the 3-year or the 1-year plan, which is yet to happen. And I wish that all the centers throughout the country, including our Center of Central Asian Study and the area study centers, are revived so that we can have a academic and research collaboration with the Central Asian states and the Central Asian countries also, so that we can build a database, a research-based, sound research base, where after we can go for the other discussions also. University of Kashmir is the topmost university in the Union Territory of J&K. We are the first in J&K, and we are NAC A+ with a CGP score of 3.31. And we are the oldest in the Union Territory, and as pointed out, that the Center of Central Asian Studies has also been established way back in 1975, which has a lot of contribution in the academic and research field developed between the developing the Central Asian countries. And at the national level, if the former ambassador could help in reviving all the centers through the country for the liberal funding, so that a strong academic and research base is developed in the country. With these words, I again congratulate and thank all the participants, and also I congratulate Dr. Tabassum for giving me a chance to be here with you. Thank you all.